I'm also questioning, where has Jamie Dimon been? Has anybody been? He's been pretty quiet, and I wonder what that's about. Especially with a lot of these other big investment banks and asset managers coming out in favor of this. He's really taken a back seat. I find that to be his silence is the most deafening for me.
Yeah, remember his last public appearance on Fox, he cursed out Brian Armstrong. He says he doesn't like this bill. He was really angry. Maybe the PR folks said, hey, take a break. This episode is brought to you by Go Mining. Go Mining is the all-in-one Bitcoin app that makes it simple and secure to earn, use, and benefit from Bitcoin every day. Bitcoin is the future of money, and Go Mining brings the future into the present, regardless of your country, income, or level of knowledge. The app brings together a growing ecosystem of Bitcoin products. This, of course, includes mining, which is the core of Go Mining's business. Traditional Bitcoin mining usually requires buying expensive equipment, managing electricity and maintenance, and setting up technical infrastructure. Go Mining removes this complexity. Instead of running hardware at home, users can access real mining infrastructure located in professional data centers through the app. Now, it's important to distinguish that Go Mining is not a cloud mining app. All mining power is backed by real equipment in their data centers. And you can verify this yourself directly in the app. They also offer what's called mining wars. So this is a competitive mining game where users can battle for greater rewards. So it gives you another option to be able to earn and makes it a bit fun as well. In addition, they offer a great crypto wallet, a built-in crypto wallet to store, deposit, withdraw, and convert supported assets directly in the app. And it's easy to manage your Go Mining initiatives within their dashboard, where you can view your rewards and all the mining activities that are taking place. And they also have a great academy that helps you to get started and answers all your questions with courses, guidelines, and much, much more. So you have to check out Go Mining. Go to the link in the description to learn more. Hey folks, welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast, Crypto Water Cooler series, where Amanda and I dive into the latest details around crypto and what you need to know. Amanda, great to see you.
Great to see you too. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Amanda, loads and loads of news to talk about, lots around the Clarity Act and much more. We got to talk about the ethics agreements, well, I should say disagreements, because there's a lot of negotiations still happening. The Republicans put forth some ethics language, really great, but the Democrats are still saying, we want a little bit more.
Yeah, I think, what was it, 616 page, revision. And then you have, I think it's 6 Democrats, if I'm not mistaken, who are kind of like the make or break of getting this through. So I hope it can, it's like Ron Hammond was telling us when we were on the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It's the government, and at the 11th hour they can throw a wrench in, and so it's like you just don't know what they're going to do. You and I were both such a champion in previous episodes of Also Brooks, and all of a sudden she's kind of about-faced and is singing a different tune. So I don't know. We shall see.
Yeah, and some of this, look, it's the sausage making process of, I'm going to come heavy-handed so that we can negotiate. I think, they might be trying to play their cards that way because, to your point, also Brooks, she helped get this bill out of the Senate Banking Committee. But the Democrats overall, including her, are saying we want each state attorney general to enforce this, but they're all different states. How do you get all of these people on the same page? It's going to be a mess. So I don't agree with that. But again, this could be a negotiation tactic. Okay, you want us to back off on this issue? Well, give us this issue.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was listening to your other episode that you do where it's just you. And I totally agree with you when you put it in the hands of the state. That's, first, can we get it passed at the federal level and focus there before we start creating jurisdictions where it kind of muddies the water? Because to your point, different states can do things in different, that's the beauty of putting it in the hands of the state, which I'm all for. But when it comes to something we don't even have regulation yet as from a broader perspective, we can't start doing that. We have to start somewhere.
Yeah, and you can imagine each state attorney general has different perspective. Sure, they may have some common ground things, but overall, they may handle things different. We see it right now with different states. New York does things different from Florida and then Texas. So it's going to be a mess. So I don't think this is the way to, go forward.
I completely agree. It's like I said, it has to start at the federal level. Like, let's focus, bring it back. But it seems to me like the Democrats keep kind of, what's that term? Like filibuster when you're on the floor and somebody does something to distract from the actual point. That's how it feels, because first and foremost, like, we have to get back to what this is. This is the innovation. This is the future of capital markets. Tokenization, like, this is going to really broaden IPOs and bring trillions back into this country and bring more people back to the states to empower them to create companies within this space. And all of a sudden, it's taken a different turn now, and we're more focused on politicians who are benefiting from. And I just feel like we need to get back to where we started.
Yeah, absolutely. And the amount of jobs this is going to create is going to be exponential because this technology has so many applications. Obviously, you have AI, you have robotics and these things, and they're all moving in parallel. But it's no longer, I need to be in the United States because I need the infrastructure of the United States, the roads, the bridges, and all that. No, this is all digital. I can go work in the Dubai or Australia and build the same company. You could argue, okay, well, you won't get the same access to capital. Yes, but I can still get capital. It's just I can still build that business out if I want because it's all digital.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got to get this right. But what's surprising, Amanda, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon came out yesterday and said, pass the Clarity Act. This is a big contradiction, to what Jamie Dimon and the community banks folks and the ABA, the American Bankers Association, have been saying. Huge vote of confidence here.
Yeah, I mean, it's about time. I'm happy he sees the benefit to this. I'm also questioning, where has Jamie Dimon been? Has anybody been? He's been pretty quiet, and I wonder what that's about. Especially with a lot of these other big investment banks and asset managers coming out in favor of this. He's really taken a back seat. I find that to be his silence is the most deafening for me.
Yeah, remember his last public appearance on Fox, he cursed out Brian Armstrong. He says he doesn't like this bill. He was really angry. Maybe the PR folks said, hey, take a break from it.
Well, you have a good PR team, at least. They said take a step back. But I do find, did he lose the argument? Does he think he won in some way? Or is he coming up with some sort of arsenal of he's going to come out the woodwork with something? I don't know. I just find his silence to be interesting.
Well, his pit bull on a leash, Elizabeth Warren, is on the attack. I don't know if you saw her video. She's saying this bill is just going to enrich Donald. She's making it all about Donald Trump. This is not about Donald Trump. Does he have some crypto exposure? Yes. Do I wish he didn't have that? Sure. But this is bigger. This is about America. It's about getting jobs, leading in technological innovation.
That's why I don't understand how you can be so against a president. You don't have to like President Trump. We've had multiple presidents in recent years that I have been not in favor of, but you can't take such a hard line to the point where now you're going to stall innovation in this country. You still have to be pro-America, right? It's like, otherwise I don't understand what you're doing. Like, we have to separate, but Elizabeth Warren seems to be very emotional and all of her reactions, everything she does, I think it's time for her to retire.
Yeah.
It's too emotional.
And the funny thing is, she's very loud. She puts on this great show, but she doesn't actually get any legislation passed. Don't get me wrong. She has influence on the Democratic Party. But the good thing is that her bark is louder than her bite. It's more, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But not everybody is a fan of what David Solomon, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, has been saying. The community banks came out and called Goldman Sachs a failure at doing banking and deposits, which is ironic. It's so funny.
That is interesting to me. I don't know what the community banks have in their back pockets there, but I don't understand that statement at all. I don't know if they're just trying to insert themselves into the media cycle or what is that?
Yeah, that's weird. Like, Goldman Sachs is one of the most successful banks. Yes, they don't handle like the commercial, retail banking, but they're hugely successful. Yes. And it goes back to, the falsehood of, well, this is going to cause deposit flights. I'm telling you, I don't think the average Joe and Jane going to the community bank, right? Not the big commercial banks and the federal credit unions overnight are about to go, oh, let me put all my money in stablecoin so I can earn yield. No, people have bills to pay. Like, I'm a crypto native user. I've been here since 2016. I put a little bit of my money in stable coins, and my money I use for the everyday normal processes.
Yeah, I wonder what will become of the community banks. I didn't even think of that until now that they're hollering about Goldman Sachs. I do wonder what will, as traditional finance becomes more and more on chain, and you already have, as you pointed out, the community banks. Not a lot of Joe Schmoes are going there already, and now with the rise of tokenization, what will become of them?
I think kind of what we saw in the banking crisis, I believe early 2023, where some of them got absorbed by the bigger banks like JPMorgan and so forth. I think that's the end goal. These bigger banks are going to become more powerful.
Yeah, well, that's why they're yelling.
Yeah.
They're treading water.
Now, on the topic of ethics, real quick, because we interviewed Congressman Brian Stile yesterday. That interview was published this morning. He was able to get his bill passed, which bans Congress from trading stocks in the House. We don't know if it's going to pass the Senate, but this is a huge win. It seems like there's a larger theme here of ethics and cleaning up Congress.
Yeah, I love this because it really is about restoring trust in the American people, too, which has been lost for various reasons. I mean, you've even seen President Trump's latest speech, which unfortunately he didn't touch on our geopolitical climate. But now we're going down the rabbit hole of election fraud in this country. And I just think there are a lot of things that need to be restored. And this is one of them. I think Nancy Pelosi really kind of blew the lid. It's been on both sides of the aisle, but specifically her for the years of successful investing that she and her family had. And it's just, you hear the salaries of some of these people and who are in high office, positions in our government. And the salaries are not huge, but yet they own multi-million-dollar homes, with moats around them. And you do question that. So I'm happy to see. And I did ask him yesterday, is this complementary in terms of the ethics issue with Clarity? And he did say yes. So I hope that that's a step forward.
Absolutely. And I hope it doesn't die, by the time it gets to the Senate. You know how the game is, right? It's fairly easy to move bills in the House, but the Senate is always the big hurdle. But hopefully they can do this and get it right, because it's time for a change. It's ridiculous what they've been doing. And I mean, Nancy Pelosi is the rock star of insider trading, right? The greatest trader of all time, Amanda.
Oh, yeah. And you know what's wild to me, Tony, is that people who work in finance, who aren't even on the trading side, right? They're maybe in the equity research part. They have huge clauses in their contracts of they are not allowed to invest. They're not allowed to play the stock market because they do have access to research reports, to analyst reports. And it's crazy how many restrictions are in place for an employee of an investment bank, but not our politicians.
Big hypocrisy, and they need to fix it. And maybe part of it is taking blockchain tech. And I think Elon had this vision of putting government spending and all this information, even if you put campaign donations on chain. I don't think this is going to happen tomorrow or next year, but maybe in the next lifetime that all of these informations and things are on the chain. So it's more transparent. You get real-time information. Well, okay, Nancy Pelosi got a donation from this corporation. Okay, let's watch what she does with the laws around that industry, right? Those type of things. I think it will help fix it, but we got ways to go, of course.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting that they still allow for ETFs. So they're still allowed with regard to mutual funds, retirement funds. They're still allowed exposure through a regulatory entity, but they're just not allowed to invest in a stock. I do think that's interesting, and I'll have to do more research there. But I wonder if there eventually will be loopholes as we get more regulatory clarity. How that still gives them kind of insider trading, just simply having access.
Well, one of the questions I asked Congressman Stile was, what about other assets? Because they could trade oil, they could trade other commodities, right? Based on if war is going to happen, or the Strait of Hormuz is about to close. There's still other assets and things that can be traded here outside of stocks. So I think it may be a crawl, walk, run approach where he's probably like, look, I know I can't get all assets in every iteration of these things, but let's start with a baseline and a foundation to get this going.
Right.
Now, Amanda, time is running out, man. August 7th is the hard date. I don't think we're going to get anything done later this year because of the midterm elections. I could be wrong. But if it misses the August window, I think Senator Toon was saying it won't happen. Now, that's one man's opinion, but I don't know. What do you think?
I hope it sounds like they're working through this weekend. And I have to remain optimistic until we see it fall through. I just have to. I saw recently on Twitter right before we got on here that Patrick Witt is optimistic. I've been behind him the whole time. I hope he's right, but we shall see, because once, Congress leaves for recess, that's it.
Yeah. And when comes September, when they're back, or late early October, it's going to be election season, mudslinging, focused on campaigning and all that, right?
Yeah, I really hope. I mean, businesses hate uncertainty more than regulation. So right now, this is a very strange time for this industry. And I'm hopeful that, end of July, I know we're July 24th right now. So I'm hoping beginning of next week, we'll have more updates.
Yeah. And fingers crossed for big updates next week, because I think next week is the critical week. To your point, we're going to be at the end of July, and this thing has to be voted out of the Senate, because then it has to go to the House to be voted on. And we got to get it out the House. Whenever President Trump signs it, it's not a big deal. It's just getting it through these hurdles.
Right. Exactly.
Now, moving ahead, the digital chambers sued the state of Illinois regarding their ridiculous digital asset crypto tax. Now, I did some sleuthing here, and the governor is buddies with Elizabeth Warren. So he's a crony, and Elizabeth Warren is the one who gave him the idea for this. But glad to see the chambers suing them.
Same. I think it was 0.2 tax specifically targeting this industry. And I think it's ridiculous because, again, you have mostly Democrats, right, criticizing and Republicans, the ethical side of politicians, specifically President Trump, on his, insider knowledge of crypto and the benefits that he and his family have received, and a lot of the money he's made, let's face it. But now you have a state who sees an opportunity here, who could potentially make, tens of millions of dollars for their state. So they're targeting this industry. They see regulation coming. They see the future, and they're going after it. And that's branded as sound policy. But don't you think that also blurs into ethical? It's just, to me, it's so hypocritical.
Big time hypocritical. And at first I was like, where the hell did this come from? And then I started, Googling the governor's name, and I decided, let me put Elizabeth Warren's name next to it. And I see they're campaigning. They're going after the folks who are being supported by the crypto industry, those who are pro crypto. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. This guy didn't just wake up randomly and was like, you know what, let's tax crypto transactions and all that. Elizabeth Warren seeded the idea, and of course she did.
Of course. And I could see that being a domino effect. I fear that Illinois will be the first of many dominoes to fall, because they're going to say, okay, you're going to get this passed. We're going to figure out a way to also, benefit from this. And this will be what they do. And it is, I think the digital chamber is saying this is unconstitutional based on, their laws in the state. And I agree with that. While that hasn't been, made firm by the court yet, like that hasn't been a reality. It seems very unconstitutional.
Absolutely. Singling out a specific asset class. And I'm glad the digital chamber is suing them. We got to get maybe Cody Carbone back on the pod to talk about this, plus the Clarity Act and much more. But I think they're going to lose this, the state of Illinois, for sure, because this is draconian and just ridiculous. And it goes back to our point earlier that the Democrats want every state attorney general to handle some of these things. Right. So let's say Illinois is doing this, but Indiana is not, right? Right. You have this hodgepodge, madness, confusion. So it goes back to Democrats, the idea of having each state handle this. No, it can't work.
Isn't that so interesting? Democrats as a whole, for all their agendas, have always wanted big government. They want the government involved. They want it at the federal level. And I find it so interesting now that they're against this. Now let's put it in the hands of the states. every other huge issue, education, Roe v. Wade, all these things, they have pushed into the government, like federal hands. And it's become Republican philosophy now. It used to be Democrat to keep it at the hands of the state. And I find that very ironic that now they're like, okay, now let's let the states handle this. It's like, oh, okay, because you're going to profit in a way that you can.
Fits your agenda.
Yes.
So annoying. But yeah, more power to the digital chamber. And if other states try to do this, I think that the entire crypto industry will gang up and sue them, just like they did under the Gensler regime. And we saw the SEC under Gensler and other agencies took big losses in courts. So, we'll fight. And I think the industry is ready to fight for sure.
Absolutely.
Moving ahead, we got big news from the DTCC. So they have processed their first live production trades of tokenized stocks, ETFs, and Treasuries with big firms like JPMorgan, BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, and Vanguard. This is incredible. You're seeing all these powerhouses coming together, and they're collaborating on the infrastructure for where things are headed. You mentioned earlier about tokenized assets and the future of capital markets. I have the thesis that the entire capital markets and economies will run on blockchain rails. It looks like that's the direction we're heading in.
I agree. And it's so funny. I think just a short while ago, how many people were Googling what the acronym was, DTCC? I think a lot of people did not know what this entity was, but everybody relies on it. And, I think of them like Visa. It's like no one's talking about Visa, but everybody knows, what they are and how they use it. And they're the plumbing. So I think this is great because tokenization is changing finance. There's so many layers that are relying on, each layer has costs, each layer has delays. You have the broker, you have the custodian, you have all these different layers. And so instead of these 5 parties or whatnot updating 5 different databases, now you have everyone referencing one source of truth, and that's the blockchain. And I think that's really a huge, huge step. And an entity like the DTCC, which, is just doing, quadrillions of money annually that they're clearing. This is a huge step in the right direction.
This is massive. This is the big 800-pound gorilla in the room. And I don't think a lot of people recognize that. To your point, like many may not know because they're not the big names in the forefront. They're in the back end, right? They know the names of BlackRock and JPMorgan and Goldman Sachs, but those entities and financial institutions can't function without the DTCC. So the fact that they're all in, they've been publishing a lot of things they're doing with different blockchains like Canton Network, Stellar, I believe. So it's incredible. I sometimes have to pinch myself like, wow, these firms are actually doing it. I was here since 2016, so I've seen ICOs and meme coins and NFTs. And now it's like TradFi institutions taking the blockchain, building incredible real world use cases and utility and solving problems and improving efficiency.
Yeah. And, because your current stock market is asleep during the weekends, during holidays. So if blockchain does not, and that's really as simple as it is. So you have liquidity that improves, you have settlement time that is improving. Who doesn't want that? You want a transaction done and you happen to get in on the Friday, but it's a 3-day weekend. And so Monday it's a holiday. Now you don't have to worry about that anymore. And I think that's great.
Yeah. And especially if there's like macro news of like war or whatever, right? That's happening. And you can't get out of your asset, go in or out, right? Because it's closed, like you said. But in a tokenized 24/7 market, you can. And crypto was the start of that, the genesis of it all.
Exactly. It's really the fact that Wall Street is really seeing this as a benefit shows crypto is clearly not going anywhere. It's here. It's just how now this becomes, how this matures into the space, how the two collide.
Yeah. And I hope people, and maybe via this podcast and some of the work we've been doing, they recognize that it's not just about the coins. The coins is like the representation of the blockchain. And yes, there's bad blockchains and bad coins and speculative, garbage. That happens in every industry, right? There's zombie stocks on the stock market and things like that. But recognize this is technology. This is the next layer on the internet. Look at the blockchain. And then if you want to invest and say, I'm going to bet on this blockchain, then you grab the coin. I like to remind people, look at the blockchain first, not the coin first.
Yeah. I think that's why it's your infrastructure companies, your stablecoin issuance companies, your treasury. Like, these are the companies that are winning because they have the infrastructure from a speed, the settlement layer, the cost layer, the technology portion. I know we'll get to that. The Securitize and Cantor Fitzgerald partnership, like, that's such a huge deal because they are the tech beneath a running, huge financial institution.
Yeah. And to your point, Securitize, they went public recently via SPAC merger on the New York Stock Exchange. So these infrastructure companies are growing, they're going public, they're expanding globally. So it's exciting times. And again, I think a lot of people are just so focused on price. And look, I have a portfolio of crypto assets. I want the price to go up, but don't miss the forest for the trees here where the world is changing, the markets are changing, and it's because of this technology.
Yeah. And I think Wall Street specifically, not just from a crypto standpoint, they're understanding that banking products are moving in this direct, like, eventually they will all be tokenized to the point where investors are now looking at it as more appealing because of that. So I think you also have banks that understand, okay, if we're going to attract investors, we need to get on board with this.
Oh, absolutely. I think the banks, if I'm not mistaken, we spoke to the head of crypto at Citi, Ryan Rugg. They're doing
Yep.
tokenized deposits. So
Right.
like this is more on the commercial side versus the retail. Retail may be a stablecoin, but tokenized deposit, they'll be able to move capital between each other faster. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, because you think of specifically with IPOs, with Cantor Fitzgerald, I mean, the traditional IPO, you had the company that was raising the money. You had a lot of intermediaries because of the traditional IPO. And so when you bring in blockchain now into that, that's ownership that originates digitally, and every layer, everything becomes programmable. And so that asset is never leaving the blockchain.
Yeah. And to your point, Cantor and Securitize, they announced a partnership to bring IPOs on chain, which is pretty wild when you think about it, that eventually companies, when they go public, they're going to go public on chain versus the traditional way because it's all going to be running on blockchain anyway. And it's just fascinating. And I think there's folks we've interviewed also that talked about private equity going on chain. So companies ahead of time can start putting out shares on chain even before they do an IPO and get more participants in there. So it's going to change capital formation.
Yeah. And I like that blockchain. I think we've said this in a lot of episodes, like, people are going to stop saying it. People are going to stop, it's going to go into the background because it's no longer just this add-on product. It becomes the operating system as a whole. And I think that's where we're seeing the evolution of this industry. It's very exciting.
Yeah, we are living in one of the most incredible technologically advanced or the genesis of a technological movement that's going to change the world in the next 100 years. I guess an analogy to that would be like the late 1800s into the early 1900s with that industrial revolution with the combustion engine, electricity, light bulb, automobile. Well, internet, blockchain, AI, robotics, space exploration, solar energy, and all that, right? Just imagine what the world's going to be like in 50 years with all this technology in place.
Yeah. It's going to be The Fifth Element with Bruce Willis. No, just.
Are you going to cryo freeze yourself, Amanda?
Oh, man. I don't think
wake up
so.
in 100 years.
That's so, I don't know why it's so morbid to me.
Yeah. But there's some folks who are talking about, well, this is a really weird thing to talk about, but your version of yourself could be put into an AI model where it has your attributes, knowledge, and things like it won't be like you, like your soul,
Right.
so to speak, but that version can live in an AI format and people can then download it into a robot avatar. It's wild, the things that you could potentially do.
And I imagine there are certain people you want that with. I don't know why anybody would want to keep me in an AI robot. I get like the geniuses, like the most brilliant minds. You're like, you want their brains here on this earth still. I get that.
Yeah, right. It's pretty wild. It's going to be a interesting future. But we got to talk. I think last item here. We're still in the crypto bear market. I think we're going to come out of it soon. But as per every bear market, there are casualties. And this is, I think, healthy. Not that I want to see anybody fail or companies to fail, but I think there's a natural aspect to bull and bear markets where the herd gets thinned out. As the saying goes, when the tide goes back out, you see who's swimming naked. We had a bunch of Bitcoin Treasury issues here. Jack Mallers stepping down from 21, Bitcoin Treasury company. Mark Moss's Satsuma Bitcoin Treasury company, the shareholders greenlighted the sale of all their Bitcoin and exiting from the London Stock Exchange. And then BitMEX Exchange is shutting down. So these are the casualties so far.
Yeah, this, and I agree with you. I don't think these are failures. I think this is just the evolution of what we're seeing this industry, come into. I think the Mark Moss business model, because I think he will only join that company last year, if I'm not mistaken. So it's very interesting because a lot of these companies, I mean, Jack Mallers, he was one of the first personalities in Bitcoin. And to be fair, these companies were kind of copycats of strategy. Yeah. But the problem was that they were more so, it was like buy Bitcoin, sell, buy Bitcoin, sell. And it was so reliant on the market that even through one bear market, Satsuma could not survive. And so you have to question, why has strategy continue to survive through all these bear markets? And it is to, strategy's credit, they did build a financial engineering portion that was unbeatable. That, Michael Saylor understands convertible debt and all these things that you had to know in order to survive those downturns. But these other guys, I think it was just it was like they were forced sellers. And to me, that's the kiss of death. It's like when that's your business model. And Mark Moss especially prided himself on a lot of these almost like TED Talks, if you will, of how to be a good businessman. And so it was shocking to see that his business was completely built on whether Bitcoin falls or not. To me, that's not a good business model.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these guys were copycats, but they didn't execute well, to your point. And you're starting to see the weakness and the chinks in the armor now. And it looks like many of them are going to have to shut their business down because even I was questioning at one point, why are all these guys starting Bitcoin Treasury companies? There's only room for so many because strategy obviously had the biggest brand, the head start, right? The first mover advantage. But do we need 20 of these? Like, why the hell would I want to go invest in it's just weird,
Yeah. And it's interesting because you think about why Michael Saylor is famous, and it's because the guy bought Bitcoin. That's it. And it's interesting because that's the least important part when it comes to these companies, these Bitcoin. And what's another misconception is Bitcoin treasury companies are not necessarily known for buying Bitcoin. They're known for having access to capital markets. It's in fact, Bitcoin is secondary really in terms of how they strategize. So I think because he became famous for that, it was the least important part. And it's really because, like I said, strategy never became a forced seller. So they continued on. But my point that I'm trying to get to is you had Saylor, Moss, Saylor. Look at all these guys that I hope that Bitcoin specifically gets away from the personalities and starts becoming the actual, let's form companies. Let's talk about the technology portion, infrastructure, because we have to get away from these influencer mentalities where you're just getting on stage simply because you bought Bitcoin and you seem to know more than everyone else.
That's such a great point. And we've talked a lot about Michael Saylor, for example, needs to not be the face of Bitcoin and even these other guys, Jack Mallers. So great point there. And the other factor that I thought of while these guys were launching these Bitcoin treasuries, especially with ETFs and BlackRock and all these institutions saying, hey, we have a Bitcoin ETF. We will custody it. It's safe. We're not doing anything crazy with it. Come invest. You're already working with us. You know our brand. Why the hell would I go to buy 21 Capital's or the company's share, right? I'm talking about the average investor now. Now, those who are sophisticated and understand certain things, sure. But the average are just going to be like, what the hell is 21 Capital? Let me just go to BlackRock or Fidelity.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm fascinated that they didn't see this coming, because Bitcoin as an asset is probably the most trusted amongst crypto. It's been on the balance sheets, battle tested on balance sheets at some of these big institutions. How did you not see this coming, where eventually like the natural evolution is where now institutions are adopting this and they're going to form their own products, you're going to go belly up. That's just how it works.
Yeah. And consumers are already in the process of trying to get educated about Bitcoin. Many of them are still skeptical. What makes you think they're going to go the next step, leapfrog Bitcoin to go say, I'm going to hold your stock because you hold Bitcoin and I don't know what you're doing? Like that mentally for, again, the average investor, right? They're not going to do that. That's a hard sell. It's already hard to sell them crypto, which is new.
Right. And once clarity passes, hopefully it does, you're just going to see more and more products, more companies coming out of that. This will be a pastime where it was like, and if you want to be on the media portion of, the broader market, that's one thing. But if you're doubling down on being the face of an asset, I think you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
Yeah. And I think that goes against Bitcoin too, right? Well, Satoshi Nakamoto being anonymous, You don't know who it is. So all of a sudden, Saylor's the poster boy for Bitcoin, and these guys, come on,
Yeah, doesn't work.
Shouldn't be that way.
No.
Well, Amanda, hopefully in the next 2 weeks when we meet, the Clarity Act has passed the Senate, passed the House, and we're celebrating. Maybe I bring some champagne in here, and
I love it. I've got glasses, but I can't. Yeah, we'll digitally toast.
Yeah, we'll see how it works out. But everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tony.